Misconnection. Luck boarded the aircraft in a timely manner, and as per standard procedure, the attendants went through the emergency escape plan with the passengers. As a frequent traveler, Luck was quite accustomed to this routine and found nothing unusual about the safety briefing. While Luck had become accustomed to the standard emergency escape procedures on flights, they couldn't help but ponder the effectiveness of such plans in today's world. They had noticed that the goal always seemed to be a safe landing rather than addressing potentially more extreme situations. As Luck settled into their seat, they observed that the flight was not full, and there were no passengers sitting next to them. Instead, fellow travelers occupied seats behind them and on the next row to the left. During the flight, Luck took advantage of this solitude to spend some time reflecting on the events of their last few weeks in silence. Meanwhile, the other passengers engaged in hushed conversations amongst themselves. Mid-flight, one of the attendants offered Luck a meal, and they gladly accepted. Given the busy day and the need for sustenance, they hadn't had the opportunity to enjoy a hot meal earlier. As the flight approached its destination and the transport driver announced the impending landing, Luck took the opportunity to check their personal belongings. To their dismay, they realized that crucial possession was missing, one related to withdrawing finances from their home bank. This possession was essential for accessing currency and making digital purchases, and its absence left Luck in a difficult situation. While panic didn't immediately set in for Luck, they were unaware of the potentially dire circumstances that lay ahead. The missing possession would severely limit their ability to commute and make necessary purchases until they could obtain a replacement. As the aircraft began its descent, Luck felt the need to use the restroom but decided to wait until after the flight had landed for convenience. Once the flight safely touched down, Luck took the opportunity to use the restroom before disembarking. Upon their return to their seat, they noticed that all the passengers were already standing, prepared to depart the aircraft and begin the next leg of their journeys. Understanding they had a transfer and only a limited time available to reach their next destination, Luck joined the other passengers in eagerly standing and waiting to disembark from the aircraft. After disembarking from the aircraft, Luck quickly glanced at the departure board to confirm the next gate they needed to reach for their connecting flight. Fortunately, they found that it matched the gate indicated on their ticket. With a sense of relief, they headed in the direction of that gate, eager to make their way to the next phase of their journey. While walking towards their initially assigned gate, Luck received an announcement that the gate had been changed. They quickly checked the board for the updated gate information and adjusted their direction accordingly. Upon arriving at the new gate, they noticed that there were no available seats, leaving them with no other option but to sit on the floor as they waited for their connecting flight. In the midst of waiting at the gate and grappling with their recent experiences, Luck lost track of time, inadvertently causing them to miss their connecting flight. It remains a mystery as to how and why this occurred, as there were no announcements or notifications requesting that they should board or indicating that they were missing. The flight departed without Luck on board, leaving them stranded at the airport and facing the daunting challenge of resolving their predicament without the ability to make a digital purchase. Fortunately, Luck had the foresight to check their bag and discovered loose currencies from various countries they had visited in the past. Being in an international transfer area, they realized they could convert this foreign currency into the local currency, enabling them to afford the cost of booking a new flight to their home motherland. With their new flight booked, Luck had several hours to wait before departure. They found a seat in a quieter area of the airport to pass the time. However, despite their exhaustion, they couldn't sleep. Their mind was consumed by thoughts of the recent events and the challenges they had faced, leaving them restless and preoccupied as they awaited their next flight. During this waiting period, Luck refrained from eating or drinking to conserve the currency they had on hand, ensuring they had enough to cover their expenses for the remainder of the journey back to their home. As Luck moved through the airport, they observed food restaurants and heard whispers about a person of significance being inside one of them. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to approach a stranger and ask whether this was the individual who had been following them. To their surprise, the stranger responded affirmatively, confirming that it was indeed the person of interest. In a state of confusion and disorientation, Luck half approached the being believed to be of importance but failed to identify then. During this encounter, They also noticed another being who had been on their previous flight and who burst into laughter while seated nearby. As the departure time for their next flight drew near, Luck took extra precautions to ensure they wouldn't miss this one. They made sure to be in the boarding queue early, determined to board the transportation promptly and avoid any further setbacks or delays in their journey. Amidst the unfolding events in this narrative, there were subtle hints of unexplained voices and inexplicable occurrences that seemed to defy comprehension. The series of events leading up to us missing our flight gave rise to a peculiar sense that some higher power or unseen force might have played a role in steering the course of events. Roman 11, don't rush now. This time, Luck was among the first passengers to board the flight, ensuring they wouldn't miss it. Upon entering the aircraft, they noticed the presence of cleaning facilities, a convenience they had not encountered at the airport. Eager to make use of these facilities, they approached one of the flight attendants and inquired. The attendant's response was affirmative, promising to locate Luck once they had settled into their seat. After finding their seat, which happened to be located towards the back of the aircraft, Luck patiently waited for the flight attendant to arrive as promised. However, when the attendant did appear, they were equipped with utensils for cleaning, but not exactly the amenities Luck had envisioned. In hindsight, they realized they should have expected this, given their seating in the economy class, where the available services might not be as comprehensive as in other sections of the vessel. Recognizing that they hadn't had the opportunity to clean themselves for over 24 hours, Luck graciously accepted the cleaning utensils provided by the flight attendant. They then proceeded to the restroom to freshen up, ensuring they felt more comfortable and refreshed for the journey ahead. After freshening up, Luck made their way back to their seat in time for the takeoff. Upon their return, they noticed that a passenger had taken the seat in the same row as them, a change from the previous flight when they had an empty seat beside them. Luck initiated a small conversation with the individual, and the two began to discuss their respective backgrounds as they prepared for the journey ahead. As the aircraft prepared to begin its journey, the customary pre-flight announcements were made. Despite their earlier reflections on the apparent shortcomings of airline safety procedures, Luck continued to listen attentively to the announcements, with the intention of getting some rest during the flight. Luck initially attempted to catch some sleep. However, finding it difficult to doze off, they opted to take advantage of the in-flight entertainment system. In particular, Luck chose to listen to music. Browsing the playlists that were available to them, Luck chose songs that they enjoyed. During this time, they also looked around at the other passengers on the vessel to see how they were passing their time. To their amusement, the row in front was enjoying a film they had seen many times before, which included an individual being able to communicate with animals. As Luck browsed through the available playlists, they carefully selected songs that resonated with their personal preferences, creating a musical backdrop for their journey. While enjoying the music, they couldn't help but glance around at their fellow passengers, curious about how they were choosing to pass the time on the flight. To their amusement, Luck noticed that the passengers in the row in front of them were engrossed in a film they had seen many times before. This particular movie featured an individual with the unique ability to communicate with animals. A curious and perhaps slightly whimsical thought crossed Luck's mind. An inner voice seemed to suggest that the character with the ability to communicate with animals might somehow be connected to their final destination. As they gazed around the cabin, they also noticed several faces that seemed both familiar and unfamiliar. Could it be that the weariness from their long journey was playing tricks on their eyes and mind? As the flight attendants began serving food to the passengers, Luck found themselves less than enthusiastic about the food choices available, a sentiment they often held during flights. Despite their reservations, they recognized the practicality of having a meal, especially given the hours that had passed since their last one. With a nod to the necessity of sustenance, they accepted the meal offered to them by the flight attendants. Luck made an effort to enjoy the meal, taking a few bites as they contemplated the peculiar sensations that had begun to wash over their body. After several bites, they decided to leave the rest of the meal untouched, as something about it seemed to have triggered an unusual physical response. Returning to their music, they couldn't help but find their thoughts drifting to the concept of money, a topic that now seemed to linger strangely in their mind. As the flight entered its final hour, Luck began to experience a growing sense of being under the influence of something beyond their understanding. With each song they chose to listen to, they couldn't help but notice murmurs and whispers from their fellow passengers that seemed to revolve around the music. Inside their mind, a peculiar number game played out. The number game that had taken root in Luck's mind continued to unfold. It had begun at 0, and by the time the aircraft touched down, the figure had inexplicably climbed to 211 million. The cryptic nature of this calculation left Luck perplexed, as the methodology behind its formation remained a puzzle beyond their comprehension. As the plane touched down safely in Luck's motherland, they had finally arrived at their destination. However, the sense of strangeness and uncertainty that had accompanied them throughout the journey persisted. Feeling the need for refreshment, Luck summoned a flight attendant and politely requested a glass of water. The attendant, wearing a reassuring smile, acknowledged their request and soon returned with a much-needed drink. After consuming the water, Luck's discomfort intensified rather than subsiding. In their distress, they vocalized their discomfort. To their surprise, the passenger seated in front responded with a cryptic question: "For what money?" This perplexing remark was followed by the passenger seated behind them chiming in with the words, "Don't rush now," before turning to use their communication device. The unsettling confrontation with fellow passengers only served to compound Luck's distress as they disembarked from the vessel and made their way towards the border checks. As they approached this crucial checkpoint, Luck's physical discomfort intensified, and they began to perspire profusely, as if they were indeed rushing on some substance. Despite the strange events and their physical discomfort, Luck successfully navigated the border checks and found themselves on the final leg of their journey toward what they considered home at this moment. They opted to use shared public transportation for this segment of the journey, which would take them to the nearest city to their final destination. Was all this only inside of my mind? That is a question I still ask myself today. J. Roman 12. Unsafe space I, having cleared the border checks. Luck, still feeling heightened, made their way to the nearest national public transport station. They opted for the most economical transportation option available, which involved traveling by road. As Luck waited for the next vessel heading in the correct direction, they noticed that the profuse sweating was gradually subsiding. Still, their mind continued to race with thoughts and questions about the strange occurrences they had experienced. When the vessel finally arrived, they boarded and paid the driver using some of the currency they still had in their possession. Luck settled into their seat near the back of the vessel, eager to continue their journey. As the vessel left the port, they couldn't help but notice that several passengers had chosen to sit near them, engrossed in their communication devices. This observation added to the peculiar sense of unease that had been building since their earlier experiences. Luck opened their own communication device, however. They quickly realized that without a local number, their options were limited. They used the vessel's connection to access various applications before their mindset took a turn for the worse. After a few minutes, the sound of law enforcement sirens in the distance caught Luck's attention, and in their altered state of mind, they began to associate them with either their arrival or those arriving with them. As Luck's mind continued to spiral into a state of confusion and delusion, they began to experience a vivid dream where they were being chased by the sirens, seemingly to deliver the reward from the mysterious number game. These surreal thoughts and dreams were intertwined with their growing uncertainty about what was real and what was not. In an attempt to bring some order to their thoughts, they started setting timers on their communication device, as if they expected some kind of event to occur before the timer ran out. As the vessel continued on its journey towards the city, Luck gradually regained a semblance of clarity. They began to detach from the surreal thoughts and experiences that had consumed them for a time, allowing their rational mind to take over. This shift in mindset allowed them to focus on the practical aspects of their journey and the steps they needed to take to reach their destination. Reflecting on the bizarre and unsettling events of the past couple of weeks, Luck couldn't help but wonder about the meaning and significance of it all. The strange occurrences, mysterious voices, encounters with unusual beings, and the pervasive sense of corruption that left them feeling both confused and uneasy. Feeling increasingly paranoid, Luck began to think technologically and became concerned about the possibility that they were being tracked. Deciding to initially turn off their communication devices, They then considered disposing of the devices entirely, but they were hesitant. Luck's actions were driven by a growing sense of paranoia and the belief that their communication devices might be a source of tracking. They proceeded with destroying the handheld device, and it was a drastic step, but it seemed like the only way to regain a sense of control and security. Luck snapped this inside of the vessel, and then once the vessel stopped at the next port, they placed it inside one of the closest bins. Luck's decision to use private transportation for the final leg of their journey was likely influenced by their desire to avoid any potential tracking or surveillance they believed might be associated with public transportation and communication devices. Their heightened state of anxiety and paranoia was driving them to take extreme measures to ensure their safety and privacy. As they continued on their journey, they couldn't help but wonder if their actions were justified or if they were simply succumbing to unfounded fears and delusions. With the first device destroyed, they waited for the final stop of the vessel before disembarking and continuing on to the final stage of the journey. Lux decided to use private transportation for the final leg of their journey. This was influenced by their desire to avoid any potential tracking or surveillance they believed might be associated with public transportation. They did not want to be followed. Luck quickly found a nearby driver, explained their destination, and engaged in a brief conversation during the hour-long journey. They discussed their backgrounds and briefly shared their recent unusual experiences, emphasizing that what they were about to do next might seem strange to the driver. Luck opened their bag, retrieved the device they used to invent, and decisively snapped it in half. They harbored suspicions that this device could also be compromised if their other communication device had been. Shortly thereafter, Luck arrived at their home. They settled the fare with the driver, expressing gratitude for the safe journey, and then made their way inside. As expected, nobody was in, but they could easily gain entry using the securely stored spare key. After a short while, family members arrived back at the premises after finishing work. Luck, still in a heightened state from their ordeal, had barely slept and was mentally exhausted. To their surprise, the initial reaction from their relatives was not one of happiness but anger. Luck apologized for the unannounced arrival and attempted to explain what they had been through. But it seemed that their explanation only fueled more anger from their family member. Feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, Luck decided it would be best to eat and then get some much-needed sleep, as they had not had proper rest or a meal in many hours. They apologized again to their family member and went to take care of their immediate needs. As Luck slept for several hours initially, they found it increasingly difficult to find restful slumber as time went by. The voices inside their mind grew louder and more varied, spanning different personas and subjects, both personally historical and fictional. The door opened on the first night. "Are they okay?" "Yes," fine, the relative replied. "For the next couple of chapters, we will skip through some days and weeks, highlighting only some and not all essential parts. It will be just enough to stay relevant."